Hi everybody! I'm really passionate about my topic today because it's the topic of single motherhood and how you can be the most kick-ass single mother you could ever be. I just want to talk a little bit about what some of my tips and secrets were for when I was a single mom, because I did successfully manage to single parent and my kids are quite well adjusted and delightful and wonderful, and I do have some insights and some wisdom to share about my single parenting years. One of the things I do want to talk about is the fact that single parenting is not always permanent. When I was a single mother, it didn't really occur to me that I was going to be married with kids. It seemed as though it would be a permanent situation. I defined myself as a single mother, and it's interesting to think about the ways we sort of categorize ourselves and perhaps limit ourselves when we define ourselves narrowly. So I think one of the things to do is remember that single motherhood is not always permanent and ongoing. It can be a temporary phase in your life. And so I think just challenging ourselves to rise to the occasion of it and to just do the best we can. You know, life is not about what happens to us. Life is about how we deal with what happens to us. So my first tip is really to accept yourself and accept your circumstances for being a single parent. Some women choose that, of course, but I think the vast majority of single mothers didn't sign up for it or wouldn't have signed up for it or didn't intend to wind up as a single mother. So I think one of the most important things we can do is sort of forgive ourselves, forgive the ex, forgive the circumstances that arose to lead us to becoming single parents. I think just accepting ourselves, our unique paths, our destinies, sort of surrendering to the unique path that we're on and the sort of adventure, the hero's journey that we're on, is one of the powerful ways to reconcile yourself to being a single mother. So the second point that I want to make, tip number 2, is the importance of beaming love upon yourself and beaming love upon your child. I think as single mothers, I recall the intensity, the rigor of it. I think it's almost unimaginable, the pressure that you're under as a single mom with that responsibility on your shoulders, that weight of responsibility on your shoulders. It's almost unimaginable unless you've experienced it. At the same time, I counsel people to not go to martyrdom about that and to not be overly holy about it, and again, just to simply rise to the occasion. The key is if you're beaming love upon your child, then they're getting absolutely what they need, right? So make sure that however you're running your life, organizing your life, and arranging things, you're able to beam upon your child. And also beam upon yourself, you know, beam self-love upon yourself as well. Really give yourself a pat on the back sometimes and really honor the heroism of the journey. And, you know, even as you're rising to the occasion, you're celebrating yourself, you're celebrating the ways you're growing and expanding, and, you know, the strength of character and the wisdom that you're developing through this unique experience. So as long as you're making sure you're beaming love upon your child as well, then you know that he or she is getting their needs met. You know, as long as you're beaming on them and loving them, you know, that's really what your kids need. And I'm not here to tell you how to parent, but, you know, beaming love upon your child is one of the best things you can do. And of course, beaming love upon yourself is a great way to role model self-love to your child. You know, to give yourself a break, to go easy. I think it's really easy to be self-critical as single mothers because we're so under duress and so under the gun and have so many commitments, and we're often operating at a deficit. It's easy to forget to honor and celebrate, you know, the incredible achievement that it is to successfully single parent. Now, in order to beam upon yourself, that leads me to my next tip, which is care of the self, right? In order to beam, you really have to actively be taking care of yourself. You have to, you know, find the time in your schedule. It's absolutely imperative that you find the time in your schedule to, you know, meet not only your survival needs for, you know, eating right, nutrition, getting as much sleep as you possibly can. I'm not unrealistic about that. I think, in fact, if anything, we make a little too much production about getting all this sleep. But, you know, get some sleep. Be sure to get some sleep. Eat right. That makes a big difference. Exercise. That makes a big difference as well. So care of yourself is important, especially when you're under the rigors of single parenting. If you're not meeting also your quality of life needs, then you're going to be operating at a deficit with your child. And it's really easy to not meet your life needs, when your quality of life needs, when you're a single parent, because they seem so luxurious. It almost seems far-fetched, it almost feels like it wouldn't be possible. But that brings me to one of my most powerful tips, which is you have to have backup. You just have to have backup. You need a full roster of babysitters. When my daughter was young, I didn't have a co-parent at all, so I was just the solely responsible for her, sole custody, and no one to shuttle her back and forth with. And I knew it wasn't always easy for the mothers who did have that X in the picture and the shuttling back and forth of the child, and so on. So it's not that one is more difficult than the other, I don't believe. But in my case, it was all on my shoulders at all times. There wasn't a backup. There wasn't anyone else who was responsible to the child other than myself. So I had to absolutely make sure I had backup, multiple backup, right? You have to have backup person A, B, C, and D, and you have to not, you have to absolutely make sure that you're not left in a lurch. You have to have backup. It doesn't matter what your budget is. I certainly was on a ridiculously skinny budget when I was a single mother, and you still need to have backup. You just have to prioritize it in the same way you would prioritize having a roof over your head, or you would prioritize, having food on the table. You have to prioritize having backup. It is unrealistic to feel like you're going to be able to do it all by yourself. What does happen when you're sick? What does happen when you have to go to the doctor, or you have to attend to other responsibilities? So have backup, and have backup B, C, and D. Have multiple people to call on, no matter what it takes. My babysitters were always my guardian angels when I was a single mother. Choose them well, and then trust them and lean into them. And if it means spending money you don't have, just spend that money you don't have. There's no other way to do it. And I'm not talking about 8-hour stretches. I'm just talking about getting some of the pressure off your shoulders. It's also one of the things I've seen with parents who have exes, that some of the tag teaming is actually incredibly burdensome and pressure-ridden, and that just having third parties involved to shoulder some of that weight is incredibly helpful. I think it's still true now. I'm married with 3 kids. Having that backup is critical. It really does take a village, and I don't think, parenting is just too difficult and too challenging to just rely solely on yourself and the other parent, the co-parent, the ex, whatever the case might be. So next is to place importance upon yourself. It's not easy to place importance upon yourself when you're a single parent and you have so much you have to attend to, but indeed just simply the idea of sort of honoring your desires, your needs. You're not a servant. Just by virtue of being a single parent doesn't mean you're just a slave to your job and your kid. I know when I was a single mother early on, I was a PhD student when I had my daughter, and then I wrote my dissertation as a single mother, and then I went off to a postdoctoral fellowship at Harvard that included teaching graduate students and undergraduates alike. And it was quite a leap to take as a single mother as far as the level of responsibility and the demands that I was placing on myself. And my life really did sort of devolve into a super intense juggling act of the 2 commitments of work and child. And I really did fall by the wayside as far as my care of self. There was a period where my hair was falling out in clumps, and it never occurred to me that maybe I should take better care of myself, but also that I should just simply place more importance on myself and round out that equation of, yes, there's an intense juggling act, and I think a lot of that is unavoidable as a single parent. And I embraced the challenge of that, and I never resented the rigors of being a single parent. I also just embraced that. However, if I had it to do over again, I certainly would have prioritized, some care of the self, and just kind of getting some of that pressure off of myself, and care of the self, and including just prioritizing, placing importance on myself. My needs, my desires, my, just sort of sovereignty over my life and my time and, my needs, not just attending to the career ladder and my daughter's needs. So the next step, I think, is one of the most important steps, which is that as a single mother, you just simply need to be yourself. Who are you? I think we get bogged down in archetypes, right? Mother archetypes. And Jamie Myers, a woman I'm collaborating with in a course she's creating called Queen Mom, she and I discuss often, and it's a part of the course curriculum, the idea of the ideal mom. So Queen Mom is about sort of helping you develop into, the best mom you can be, and it's called, the tagline is Everyday Happiness for Everyday Moms, and it's Jamie's brainchild, her dream, and I'm really excited to be playing a supporting role in that. But she and I talk about like ideal mother, right? We get a notion of ideal mother in our head, all the things we should be doing, all the grand ideas and grandiose notions that we have about what it would mean for us to be the perfect parent. And so every day and every minute of every day we're measuring ourselves against those ideals, and it's just simply impossible to live up to those expectations. So one of the exercises that Jamie has us do is to identify what our priorities are in terms of what's important as a mother, and what kind of mother do we want to be, and who are we, what are our noble qualities, what are our core values. In my case, I would want to be an inspiring mom, right? It's more important to me to be inspiring than to be organized, for instance. So maybe I could let myself off the hook for being a less organized mom. Maybe my kids don't get to bed right at that critical bedtime hour that I'd like them to go to bed at, but I am being an inspiration, and I'm especially able to be an inspiration if I'm energized, and if I've filled my tanks, and if I'm taking care of my basic needs, if I'm a part of the equation of the well-being equation, and I'm not just foisting that onto my child, right? I'm putting my own oxygen mask on even as I'm attempting to hold my oxygen mask on my child. So the importance of being yourself, knowing who you are, and honoring who you are as a mother. Your child really just needs you to be you. Your child does not need you to be the perfect archetypal mother. As Jamie and I concur, your child chose you. You're the perfect parent for the child, and that's true even if you're a single mother. This is your child's destiny. It's not all riding on your shoulders. So just be the best you that you can be. Don't try to be the best mother you can be. Your child just needs an amazing role model of you. Just be yourself, and that's one of the best tips I can give for single mothers as well. It's enough just to be you. So the next thing, as far as putting yourself on the priority list, which is to honor your self-importance, is to create a kind of a life regimen and a priority list. I think it's not enough to identify what your needs are. You have to actually create a life regimen that allows for your needs to be met. So you budget for work time, you budget for time with your child, but you also budget for basic needs. If you're dating, for instance, you just budget that time into your schedule. I like to consider it like a jazz song, right? You have this great infrastructure, but there's a lot of room for improvisation and riffing, right? You're both improvising and being free and flexible and fluid with your life, but you have an infrastructure. So I'm just saying, as a single mother, to kind of get out of the the prison cell of it, right? The way it forecloses around you. You sort of wind up bound up within this rigorous parenting apparatus. But I think by creating a life regimen, and time management around it, that can be incredibly freeing and liberating. So actually sit down with a schedule and map out where and when you can get your needs met. Some of the things will necessitate having backup again, back to the backup advice. Having backup and having babysitting help so that you can do a few things here and there. You can get some things done and you're just out of the vice grip. I remember always using that word when I was a single parent. And don't get me wrong, my life is, I don't think, any easier now that I'm a married mother of 3. It's not easier. It's the relentlessness of it that's different, right? There is someone to shoulder that weight. My life is certainly no less demanding though, and that's one of the reasons I say that it's better not to go to comparison and fantasies and longings for, the grass being greener on the other side of the fence, because I think most of us learn the hard way that one isn't necessarily easier than the other, and we're often projecting fantasies of other people's ease and comfort. I think my life is, if anything, perhaps more demanding as I have more dimensions to it than I did. There are more loose parts now, but I remember the relentlessness and the rigor of being a single parent, and that's what, if I had it to do it over again, I would have made it easier for myself by having more backup and more infrastructure. So those are my tips, and I just want to thank you so much for hearing me, a little bit about my story, and I wish you all the best of luck with your parenting journey and with your single parenting journey.